My dear friends, it is time for the feature address of the evening. Our feature speaker focuses on doing the right things, regardless of its consequences. He is obedient to his oath of office, as he knows that it is better to obey than to sacrifice. And that is why he always acts without fear or favor, malice or ill will. His stellar academic record is characterized by being awarded the prestigious Sylvan Bowl Scholarship, and is further highlighted by his doctoral degree, specializing in the science of geochemistry, having previously completed his master's degree and BSc degree with first-class honors. This outstanding academic accomplishment positioned him for leadership as he held the positions of head of the Seismic Research Unit of the University of the West Indies and general manager of National Quarries Limited. His leadership success and his desire to serve ushered him into the political arena, and in this regard, he first entered Parliament as an opposition senator in 1987 and served until 1990. In 1991, he entered the lower house, having been elected as a member of Parliament for Digo West, and altogether continues to serve at the parliamentary level for more than 3 decades. During this period, at the executive level, he held the portfolios of Minister of Land and Marine Resources, Minister of Planning and Development, Minister of Housing, and Minister of Trade and Industry. He was elected as the 4th political leader of the PNM in 2010 and has led the re-engineering of the movement with vision, passion, and integrity. He is a leader of leaders, and help me welcome tonight in Marabella to bring the feature address the Member of Parliament for Digo West, the political leader of the People's National Movement, and the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Thank you very much, Chairman Daniel Duki, who is the Assistant Secretary of our party and does the human service for us in more ways than one. Permit me tonight to recognize in this audience His Worship the Mayor of San Fernando, Alderman Junior Regrello, Deputy Political Leader, Party and Elections, Mrs. Joan Yule Williams, a number of my cabinet colleagues, including the Minister of Health, Member of Parliament for St. Joseph, Mr. Terence Dayal Singh, and quiet but deep thinking, very competent Minister of Labour, Mrs. Jennifer Baptiste Primus, my other parliamentary colleagues who might be here who are not visible to me from this podium, members of the executives from San Fernando East, San Fernando West, citizens of the Southland, from wherever you've come from tonight. You have Pointe-a-Pierre here as well? You have an MP for Pointe-a-Pierre? The MP for Pointe-a-Pierre is here? You mean the PNM MP? Okay. And all those of you who are listening, because we are carrying this meeting across the country by way of the various media, a very good night to you all, and I thank you for paying attention to our event. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard a long introduction about me there a while ago. I keep telling this particular chairman to stop doing that. Because if by now you don't know me, you will never know me again. Tonight, I've chosen to come here in Marabella, the epicenter of the action that we have taken in recent days. And I've come here symbolically to indicate to the rest of the country that we are so confident with the rectitude of our action that we are not prepared to shy away from the persons whom the actions are going to affect the most. It is because we understand very clearly the repercussions of the action that we have taken, that we need very little encouragement and very little advice as to our responsibility to the people of the Southland for whom that refinery was their bread and butter and their children's future. Tonight I stand before you not as some qualified geologist, as my introducer said, or even as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Tonight, I've come to the people of Marabella, Gasparillo, Pointe-a-Pierre, San Fernando as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago with a job to do and a duty and an obligation to tell you what is happening. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance would have told you the financial state of Petrotrin. He gave you some numbers, some very horrendous numbers. Those are the numbers that the accountants meet in Petrotrin, that they have in the company, that they have in the Ministry of Finance, that they have in the banks, that they have at the IMF. But as soon as we decide to confront this issue, all kind of Tom, Dick, Harry, alive and ghosts appear to tell you when they cannot challenge the state of affairs, because they too understand that it's horrendous, they start telling you the Prime Minister lied, the numbers wrong. Where are they getting their numbers from? If the numbers in the Ministry of Finance are wrong, because people in finance can't add, subtract, and divide, where are they getting their numbers from? And if those numbers are wrong, and everything was hunky-dory, how come Petrotrin has to sell its product 2 months hence that it has not made yet to get money to pay today's bills? So even if you have no degree, you have no A-levels, you have no O-levels, you have no nothing, I'm sure you can understand that if you have to spend December money in September to pretend that you're doing well, you know something is wrong. But I want to talk to the mothers, the children, the neighbors, and all those who are attached to the Petrotrin business to make one clear statement to you first and foremost. The government is not closing down Petrotrin. And in case you were just opening your fridge and you didn't hear that when you closed the door, let me repeat it. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is not closing down Petrotrin. As you heard the Minister of Energy say, or the Minister of Finance say, Petrotrin is an integrated company, means it's involved in a number of things. It's involved in owning assets. It's involved in looking for oil. It's involved in piping oil. It's involved in drilling for oil. It's involved in refining oil and getting refined products. It's involved in marketing its refined products. What Mr. Imbo told the people of Trinidad and Tobago today, particularly the people of this part of our country, is that that aspect of Petrotrin that is involved in refining oil and selling refined product has been bleeding this country dry. And he also told you that this is not news to those who are involved in the business. And there are the people in the country who have the best living provided by the state. The best living in this country provided by the state of Trinidad and Tobago. You, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, are the people who work with the refinery in Point-A-Pay. That's a fact. But when he told you those numbers, you could take the position that, well, don't bother me. But he also told you somebody has to pay it. What has been happening is that we have not been facing up to the reality. Mothers and sisters and brothers and employees, a day of reckoning always comes, and that day is now. And because it is now, let me get back to where I am. I am the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. That's where it comes from. And I have a responsibility, not to me and my cabinet colleagues, because I tell them all the time from the day we entered the first cabinet meeting, I told every cabinet minister, do not fall in love with this job. Do not fall in love with the job. Give it your best. Get interested in your commitment, but don't fall in love. I don't want to hear no minister talking about my ministry. You have no ministry. It's the ministry. You see, as I entered into this assignment as Prime Minister, I was reminded this week by an article in the I think it was the Guardian, a couple of days ago, that quoted at length a speech I made in the Parliament as a member of the Manning government. I was not a minister, contrary to what was said in the papers today, that I was a minister when I made that speech. I was a backbencher in 2009. When the issue of Petrotrin came up, I raised it in the budget debate. And I raised this whole question of the behavior of those who were charged with the responsibility of looking after your money down there. So what I told you in that speech on Sunday night was not news. I made that speech in the Parliament and alerted this country to the Petrotrin calamity, and I did so as a member of a government that I was a part of, having been fired in 2008. But I was still there as a member of the government, and I raised that issue. All those who chose not to listen or to pay attention, because the band was beating a nice music and wele, everybody whining. Nobody listened. Nobody listened. 2009, 6 years later, I find myself as Prime Minister of this country. The problem was 6 years worse. Because every passing month, every passing day, it gets worse. But the smart Alex were hiding the losses, as Minister Ember told you. You make loss this year, you don't declare it. You hide it and talk about future earnings. And you hide it, and then one day, the day when the PNM comes into office, and all things begin to change, all of a sudden, the accountants know that you shouldn't be hiding losses for future profits when all the numbers show that there are no future profits to come. So bam, in 2015 accounts, $5 billion in losses. And you know, I didn't come down here to talk about them, but let me talk about him. I can't. One former Minister of Government yesterday told the most comprehensive lie to the traumatized people of Trinidad and Tobago yesterday, that the company was making profits all these years, and it's when this government come into office, we interfere with the management, and as a result of our interference, the company started to lose money. That was Rudal Munilal. And the other one was Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, who loved press conferences now and loved to talk about things she ain't know nothing about. She is now saying she had left $3 billion there for the company, and we came in and we canceled it, and that's why the company is in trouble. So we came in 2015, and the $3 billion to save the company, we canceled it. So what happened in 2012, 13, 14, and 15 when you were not there? Mr. Ember just told you what was happening. And we came in, and mothers and sisters and brothers and workers at Petrotrin, we did not act in a cavalier manner. We came with no malice to anyone. We came with a desire and a requirement and an obligation for the 5-year period that we are in office to fix the problems of Trinidad and Tobago insofar as we are able to and insofar as they are permitted to be fixed. So we knew that Petrotrin was a problem. So you know what I did? I begged Wendell Motley to come and serve on that energy subcommittee of the cabinet. Wendell Motley had retired. In fact, I begged him to stay on UTC board because he is the kind of talent and has the experience and the historical perspective to know what to look for. Let me tell you tonight, it was Wendell Motley who found out and pointed to me what they were doing in Petrotrin, hiding those losses and having it there, carrying it forward. And we realized immediately in an energy subcommittee of the cabinet in the Prime Minister's office, we realized the nature of the beast that we were dealing with. We have a serious problem here because, you know, they could have skylarked in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, We have no skylarking room. You know why? Because in a matter of months, we are required to treat with $850 million payment in one check. Not a piece now and a piece then, you know. $850 million US that company borrowed and spent due for payment in a few months' time. So even if we had wanted to skylark and to play smart and push it down the road, 2019 is upon us. And if we manage by some miracle to be able to deal with that without pain, a number of months not too far beyond that, another 700 million US is due. So as we're looking at our company, the company is in the hook for almost 1,600 million. Let me put it in a different way. 1,650 million US dollars. So multiply it by 6 and see the kind of trouble that all you're in a matter of months. And this has nothing to do with the OWTU, JTOM, or any trade union. This has to do with the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and the government is the leader and the manager of the state of affairs. So we had to face it. We had to face it. So what did we do? We started to look at what it means to deal with that, because the one thing that was clear is that the company was in no position to deal with that. So whether you like it or not, it's a matter for the Minister of Finance. A Minister of Finance who already was up to his eyeball in what he has to deal with. And let me go back to the lady of the last government who see the oath of office different to how I see mine. The oath of office of the Prime Minister and other members of Parliament says, before you could sit down in that chair in the Parliament, you have to swear on whatever Bible or Gita or Quran that you use. Swear that you will act without favor, without fear, without malice, and without ill will. And if you don't make that swearing, you don't sit in that chair in the Parliament. We all did that. I did that. But I discovered the fear that they interpret is the fear of losing office, the fear of losing the seat, the fear of losing office. And that is why, that is the fear that drove them to not deal with this matter when it should have been dealt with, because they are afraid of losing their position. When it was announced that the government is going to close down the refinery, one very prominent columnist wrote, the PNM has lost the 2020 election. I understand that. The fear of losing the election, the fear of losing your office, the fear of losing your position caused the last prime minister to spend every God in heaven cent that was available to this country. Spend everything in the budget. The 5 largest budgets in the history of this country, she spent those. We had $16 billion in NGC, she spent that too. We had a few billions in the Green Fund, she spent that too. She sold half of FCB Bank, she spent that too. And they spent all of it and still lose the election. It was that fear. It was that fear of losing an election that caused her and her cohorts to bankrupt this country. To the point where when they lost the election, her minion from the central bank, the one called Jawala Rambaran, came into the office of the Minister of Finance with a grin from ear to ear to tell him that we only have money left for 3 days. We only have money left to run the country for 3 days because they had used up all that was available. We had to start from ground zero to go forward. And tonight I want to congratulate the Minister of Finance. And knowing what they had done, and knowing what our task was, the most popular word that they were using in respect of our tenure was collapse. The economy collapsed. The government going to collapse. After 1 year, call the election now with a stupidity. But the government has not collapsed. The country has not collapsed. And come Friday, wherever you are, whatever you do, celebrate the PNM's victory of September 7th. So, we had the best brains available to us in the country, functioning in the energy subcommittee and looking at this issue. The first thing we did was to appoint this review committee to look at what is going on in Petrotrin and come back and tell us. That was the Lashley committee with the Lashley report. That committee was an overview. When it came back with its tale of woe, we didn't act on it then because there was not sufficient clear and definitive information. We know it was bad, but we didn't know how bad. We know it could be fixed, but it didn't say how to fix it. We sent that report to the Ministry of Energy, to the Ministry of Finance, and to Petrotrin to see what was being said about the company. And they reported back to the Cabinet Subcommittee. So we had that information, and that confirmed further how bad the situation was. 2 things I want you to take note of there from that report that came back to us was that there were serious governance issues, meaning problems with how the place is run. Notwithstanding any problem that you may have with the nature of the crude, the configuration of the refinery, the fundamental problem in the first line of the recommendation was how the place was run, the governance issue. And one of the recommendations that was made is that we should do something about the board and so on. You would have heard the OWTU saying that I'm the worst thing in the world. They've called me all kinds of names, but I want to make it very clear. I'm in no fight with any trade union. I'm in no fight with any trade union leader. I'm just doing my job. But one of the recommendations that was made was that we should appoint the board and let the board function with a greater longevity and not have these frequency of changes and so on, because that is governmental interference in the company, and that somehow contributes to this general mismanagement of the state of affairs in the company. We accepted that. But it said something else too. The overview that was done involved 2 persons from the union. And it was our intention that they would stay with us for the course, for the fix. and for the new company, and for the new era. They're smarter than that. They wanted no part of that. Because today, to come and tell the country that you have to take this kind of action, only very few of us were prepared to do it. As I stand before you tonight, I am the only prime minister in this country that stood up in the parliament and raised the Petrotrin situation and then addressed the nation last January on Petrotrin and addressed the nation again last Sunday night on Petrotrin and chaired a cabinet that took a decision that if you, the people, don't want the kind of action that is going to rectify this situation and put us in a better situation, we signed our death warrant according to the pundits. We did it. Because the only fear that I have is the fear of if we don't do this, what will be the future of the children of Trinidad and Tobago? I have absolutely no fear of losing this job. And I told that to the head of the OWTU long time ago, you know. I told him, this is a job that I do because I have found myself in this situation and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. I'm not in love with it. But if it comes to that this is going to cause me to lose this job of Prime Minister, I will do so and thank you very sincerely for the opportunity you gave me. But what has to be done has to be done. You see, it is the fear of losing this job which caused the last Prime Minister to see the government revenues falling, but approving record bigger budgets, and see that the money is running out, but go and offer a pay increase to public servants that caused the Minister of Finance to go and borrow $5 billion to pay to public servants. I don't even know if I heard 5 public servants say thank you to the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What I'm hearing is some leader of the PSA saying that government must put $15,000 in the bank account of every public servant or he go among the country. That is the kind of nonsense that we are facing in Trinidad and Tobago now. We just borrow. We just borrow $5 billion to pay you back pay. And a few months later, you're threatening the government and threatening the country that if we don't put cash in your account, right? We have not taken one gazetted public servant off the government payroll. Every public servant who is a gazetted public servant has retained his or her job in this country. And in our moment of greatest need, when sanity has appeared in this country, when it was thought it would never occur. Because, you know, I am now discovering, even as I was telling these people that this government is serious and I'm serious, they didn't believe me. So when the action is taken, they're all surprised and shocked because they always thought that no government would ever close the refinery because we are afraid of losing our office. Well, this government will do what has to be done to protect the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because it is not Petrotrin. It is not the OWTU that is a threat. It is the whole country. The entire country is put at risk. You heard the numbers that came out there. $11 billion in standing debt. We hired, through the board, experts' opinions to look at all the possibilities of the resources and the operations, and they concluded, just like what was happening for the last years, year after year after year after year, if we don't do what we say we're going to do, Petrotrin will lose $2 billion a year going forward. So, what are they asking us to do? To agree that we would know this and we would leave it, so in 5 years' time, instead of talking about $11 billion in debt that you're carrying, it will be $21 billion. That's what they're asking us to do. And then some of the smart Alex is saying, well, If you close it down, you still have the debt. Yes, but we're not making any new one. Is that too difficult to see? What the government is trying to do is to stop the red ink from drowning us. So what has been accumulated as debt already, we will take action to stop it and deal with it. But we can't keep operating the plant to be generating additional new debt, because those children who entered school yesterday for the first time, by the time they leave school, Petrotrin would have run up $14 billion in debt for them. Is that the future you want for your children and grandchildren? Huh? They entered school yesterday and they spent 7 years in school at $2 billion a year in losses. That is $14 billion. And that is what falls to me as Prime Minister today, to prevent falling on the shoulders of the next generation. And if for that, you'll put us out of office, then history will absolve me. Now, we say we're going to close the refinery. There are going to be serious consequences, we know that. But there are ways of doing things to ease the burden that will fall on those who are directly affected. Firstly, nobody's going to go home without an attractive package, a separation package. A large number of the workers who are involved in the refinery and who would be affected in this way are approximately in the age 50 and above. We are going to offer them an attractive, enhanced early retirement package, and beyond that, they are having their pension to access later on, as the case may be. So nobody's going to end up on the street eating from the garbage bin. You may not be enjoying the land of milk and honey that you're enjoying now, but the milk dry up a long time and the honey done. Eh? So you're going to have a decent living on the separation. There are other things that the government will do to make it easier for you. The government will ensure that we entertain public sector programs, for example. We'll enter into housing programs. And persons whose interest is getting a house or building a house and finding a piece of land, we are going to make sure that Petrotrin land is available around the Southland for those persons who can access land for housing as part of the settlement. We are also knowing that there are going to be households where, depending on the nature of their connection to the industry, there might be additional pressure on people who are unemployed and have children to look after. We will put, because of the special nature of this development, we'll put special service systems in place to make sure that all those children get what is required to maintain the quality of life that we want them to have. And it's going to cost you, the taxpayer, a bit more, but at least we're going to stop the continuous red ink. So there are going to be special programs. We are also going to focus on expenditure in this part of the country more than normally, so as to allow more opportunities for jobs, even if they are temporary jobs, to go and handle us through the transitional period. So you'll see more developmental works. The details of those will emerge as we go forward. And this will not only affect this area here, because while we're not closing down Petrotrin, we're getting out of the refining business for reasons given earlier on. We are going to redouble our effort and increase our expenditure in the production of oil for the reasons given by the Minister of Energy. We are going to spend more money in drilling. Where do they drill? Faizabad, Palo Seco, where do they drill? Certainly not in Port of Spain. And drilling requires a certain number of people carrying out certain specific activities. So as we make this closure of the refinery here, we expand the operation of the country in the other areas of Southland, because we are in the quest for more oil. The same thing with Trinma. We have not, when last was new well drilled in the Trinma field? The only time Trinma featured in recent times is when the last Prime Minister came on television one night and told you they found that Jubilee field, and she and the chairman had some little oil like cooking oil in a bottle. We have not heard anything about the Jubilee field since. All we heard was a financial scandal where who thief who and who thief what, that was their contribution. What I'm saying to you tonight, you are fortunate because you have in this cabinet two people who know something about geology and the oil industry. Huh? So we know that if we are going to improve the production in the only area where we know we have oil, the first thing we have to do is to do an updated seismic survey on the Soldado field. The technology now is far superior to what it was the last time it was done. You do a new seismic survey now, you're going to pay for it. It's going to be done, but it will give the drillers a sharper eye as to where to put the well down with a better chance of success. And as you put wells down with better chance of success, and you prove up oil, and you bring oil from that field, your oil production is going to improve, and that is a profitable business. We couldn't explain it any clearer, that it is the refinery operation that is losing the money. So if we cauterize the refinery and continue with the business of Petrotrin and do what I'm saying here, it brings opportunities for jobs and success with more production of oil, and we can now be profitably in the oil business in Trinidad and Tobago. Petrotrin is the only oil company in the world that has made no adjustment whatsoever to the collapse of oil price that took place in 2016 and 17. Just go on as usual. You know why? Because it is backstopped by the Treasury of Trinidad and Tobago. And that fact has created a mentality in the minds of those who operate the company. So we don't have to pay tax. It's massa bull, massa cow. Every other person who takes out a barrel of oil anywhere in this country under the law has to pay tax. They don't cater for that tax. The law don't apply to them. So they handle the money in whatever way they want to handle it, but the one thing they're not doing is paying the tax. And the company is on the edge of insolvency. The reason why they send that list to the Ministry of Finance every month to say who they owe is because any one of those contractors who is not paid could go to the court and tell the court, I'm owed money by Petrotrin. I'm not being paid. These are their accounts. I want to declare them insolvent. Liquidator. You saw that happen when the government took CLF to court? You saw that? And all the experts were saying it couldn't happen. CLF was too big and shiny. In 5 minutes, the court ruled. You're earning X, you're spending Y, you have debt of A, B is more than A, you're insolvent. Case closed, liquidator. But that somehow didn't seem to matter to the culture in the organization, because the culture was the Ministry of Finance will do it. I'm hearing politicians who spent billions of dollars in all kind of foolishness jump into the brew now and saying, the Prime Minister lied, the Minister lied, the Ministry of Finance doesn't provide any financial support to Petrotrin. But I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I have been in the cabinet many times on a Thursday morning when a note would come, and the note is to authorize the Minister of Finance to authorize a bank to provide Petrotrin with $50 million, and it's all USA, $50 million to buy oil to lose it. And then you're telling me the Minister of Finance doesn't provide any support. But they have to tell you that, you know, because none of them could explain to you why this problem existed, and they did not attempt to fix it. They did not attempt to fix it because of fear of the reaction that will come if they attempt to fix it. And that fear caused them to pretend it is not there, to lie to you, to hide the numbers, and to pretend that all is well. And you're hearing that even today. Even today you're hearing that. So all of a sudden, the opposition leader has declared that she's going to file a motion of no confidence in the government or the Prime Minister. I thank you very much, Mrs. Kabla Prasad Business. I was waiting for this for a long time. And she says, the Prime Minister would be afraid to set a date. Well, you just file the motion, and I give you the assurance that the date will follow immediately from the government. Because it is time the country knows how we got where we are, why we are where we are, and what we're doing about it. Motion of no confidence is the best news I heard for the week. Right? We're going to have that. But the bottom line is this. We as a government, we are committing to treating with the human side of this development. But of course, as I said on Sunday night, there are those who see this as an opportunity to resurrect themselves. There are those who are selling you saddles on dinosaurs to go to horse races with. There are those who believe that this will bring them back into government because the government is going to collapse. But I have absolute confidence in the intelligence of the people of Trinidad and Tobago and your decency. And if I miscalculate on that score, it's not my fault. And I will accept the verdict of you, the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, another thing that we'll do, when we restructure Petrotrin and create a new entity, managed with sanity, we are going to offer the employees at Petrotrin shareholding in that new company. They could accept it if they wish. It wouldn't be forced upon anybody. But it will be a company that will have a very good chance of making very good earnings. And if they have a shareholding in there, then that is how you participate and prosper by virtue of working for the entity with some stock ownership being made available. In the United States, in Germany, that is the method that they use to give labor a significant portion and interest in what is produced and what goes to market. We have had examples here that we shouldn't follow. I want to draw your attention. I'm talking here to the wives who will talk to their husbands and the sons who will talk to their fathers and vice versa. When TCL was restructured, all kind of manima went on there. But one of the offerings that was made in that development is that the restructured company, as part of the settlement to the workers, had offered them stock in TCL. At that time, the stock was trading at 90 cents. They were encouraged not to take it. The stock is now, that stock rose to as high as $5 when it was offered, when the offer was made. It is now trading steadily, just above $3 or thereabouts. And I'm sure the people who encourage those workers not to have taken the 90 cents want them to forget that. Another opportunity will come because this government will ensure that as part of the settlement to the workers who will be working in the new Petrotrin, a stock ownership is something that would make the separation not just bearable, but leave something for your family. But people have different requirements. Some people will demand cash because they may have needs to make payments in 2 or 3 different places, and they want cash to make those payments. There are others who want to leave something for their children and their grandchildren, and the stock is the best thing that they will have to leave for their grandchildren. We wouldn't tell them what to do, but we'll make the offer available so that when we begin to operate a second time around in the oil industry, we expect to have workers who are not just dependent on strike and negotiations every 3 years, but who will be owners in the vineyard where they work. You see, I have an issue which most of you don't have. I never know what I'm dealing with or who I'm dealing with. Because all the people who are in front of this decision making loud shouts of disapproval, they're either labor or they are politicians, and or both. every single one of the voices out front opposing this very sensible decision has a connection to a political party. The OWTU has a political party, MSJ. Watson Duke is a politician in Tobago. He's a minority leader. Carolyn Sipasad Bechan, she's working in a tomb somewhere called the Cops. She appeared like an apparition. Then, of course, the opposition leader is a politician. These are the four quarters from which this unreasonable opposition is coming. You never know when they're talking like union or when they're talking like politics. The PNM is the only political organization that is not conflicted and represents all the interests of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The only entity that is involved in this decision making that is not conflicted is the PNM. So we can make a decision, balancing it, taking into account the need to support those who are going to be hurt in the Southland, but also taking into account those in Laventille and Scarborough and Charlottesville and Sandy Grande who have a stake in this matter. Only the PNM can do that. Because we are not conflicted. There are those who are only concerned about how the reduction in numbers at the refinery will affect their own personal well-being. I can't argue with them on that. I can't argue with Labour representing the workers because that is their job. But as I said to them before, my job as Prime Minister is not your job. They're two different jobs, and we need to see eye to eye, and we need to understand that we are all trying to go to the same place, and that's why I'm in no fight with anybody. I received a letter from the Labour movement late yesterday evening asking for a meeting. I immediately agreed. I'm going to meet with them on Thursday afternoon. Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'll meet with them. I am curious to hear what they're going to tell me. Because you see, this matter didn't start yesterday. We didn't come here by waking up out of bed because somebody screamed, jump up and pulling on our clothes and running into the traffic. We took a year and a half analyzing this matter. And eventually, in a sane and sober and disciplined way, we came to a decision. A decision which shocked some people. So shocked are they that they gone and cobble up something to come and give us as an alternative. So we took a year and a half to come to this position. But you could take one night and two friends and come with something and say, this is what you're supposed to do. Because basically, what is happening is that this security blanket is difficult to let go of. That kind of approach is wanting to preserve the status quo. Because to change it, to break this egg, to make this omelette is too far, bridge too far for many people. I have seen myself being called a liar twice in this country. We had a president who one day got a VAPS, called the Minister of National Security, called the Commissioner of Police, called the head of the army, and had a meeting for 3 hours. And when I found out about it, and I asked, what is this about? The President of the Republic told the country that I told him to do that. And then the newspaper started to say, well, two of them, one say A and one say B, so we don't know who's speaking the truth. Called a liar by the president. Good. I invited the board to make its final presentation to the cabinet because the board was in constant communication with the cabinet. No board could be allowed to be left to make a decision like this on its own. No cabinet could turn a blind eye to a decision like this being made in Petrotrin or anywhere for that matter. So they had to keep reporting to the board, to the cabinet. When they had to come back to make that final presentation, and all the numbers were put to us, all the arguments were put to us in the end after months of dealing with the issue. And the cabinet took a decision that we will accept the recommendations to take the action of getting out of refining for reasons given tonight. That was done on a Thursday afternoon. I immediately asked for a meeting with the union, the representative trade union. Not JTOM, not NATUC, not FITON, with the union. And that was the first time, actually, that I would have been meeting with the union. Because you see what's happening in labor in Trinidad and Tobago is that there are some people who are taking the position that the contract at the company is a different thing, or is the same thing as what they want to deal with at all labor unions. So a group of unions used to come and meet with me. But when it was time to deal with Petrotrin's issue and Petrotrin's numbers and Petrotrin's contract, the government is only going to deal with the OWTU. So bringing all your friends to make noise is not going to change the fact that this is an OWTU issue at Petrotrin. So they came, and contrary to what you're being told, they were told what the cabinet had agreed to and what the cabinet is going to do with respect to treating with this very urgent matter. Because I'll tell you one thing, one of the reasons why the accounting firm suddenly in 2015 accounts decided to expose what they were doing in carrying forward these ridiculous losses is because the debt was coming to be paid, and they knew that in any treatment of that debt, it more than likely would involve refinancing of the debt because the company couldn't pay it and the government couldn't pay it. So the only thing that is likely to happen is that the government is going to try to refinance the debt. You know what that means? It means take a new loan to pay the old loan. But the bank is not going to just come and give you money to pay the loan you couldn't pay. The bank will come in and examine what is going on in Petrotrin. So that now being on the edge of the horizon, they realize that the game is up. So that is how we own up to what has been happening. So when we take the decision to come out of refining, Thursday evening, Tuesday afternoon, I'm talking to the union. And of course, before that, I thought I had friends in the trade union movement, and I would like to believe we still have friends. So I didn't write the head of the OWTU. I sent a minister from my office to go and stay. The Prime Minister would like to meet with you and so and so and so. Not coming. And then when I said, but you were invited to talk to me when we were about to appoint the board, and you choose not to come. Comes and tells the country, Prime Minister lie. You show me a letter. They never invite me. And then I realized that I should have formally invited. My mistake. I should have written a letter. So sending the minister to ask for the meeting was completely unacceptable. But as fate would go, the minutes of the meeting that we had last Tuesday, the very last line of the minutes say that the meeting went well and it was very productive and very cordial. And I remember as we stood up to leave, the head of the union said to me, JTOM wants to have a meeting with you. I said, write me. So they wrote me, and we're having the meeting on Thursday afternoon. And I'm saying to you here, national population, if on Thursday afternoon, the labor movement, well, the OWTU, because there's no labor movement in the contracts of Petrotrin, if the OWTU presents anything that could improve on the current situation we in the government will be the first to grab it and put it into force. Because you see, we have had their inputs before. The OWTU made presentations to us before in documentary form, presented it at my office as Prime Minister. As Prime Minister, I'm not going to sit down and take a decision on all those matters. I sent it to the team that was working on Petrotrin. I said, this is what the OWTU has put in as a basket of proposals. Those proposals were factored into the final outcome. It is not for me to say they didn't make sense or they make sense. It's not the Prime Minister doing that. All of it went into the basket of considerations, and at the end of the day, when a decision is made, it is quite wrong for you to say that your inputs were disregarded. Maybe you probably expected that we will do exactly what you've said, but you would have made recommendations. We would have taken them seriously as we've taken everything seriously. Let me ask you all a question here. You would think that this government really could have avoided this situation, and there was an easy way out, a shortcut out, and we would buy this fight just so because we like to fight? We are on this, hoisted on this petard, because that is what is on the ground. That is what exists. It is the only sensible decision to take, and we are making the only sensible decision that the circumstances warrant. And when we are through with it, what do we see? We see a company engaged in oil and significant oil production, employing the people with the skills to produce the oil that we want to sell. And here are the experts. We can't sell the oil because the oil ain't good, the oil have sulfur. And saying that only Petrotrin refinery could refine Petrotrin oil, so if we don't have the refinery, the oil is useless. That is the kind of conversation that they're engaging in. Ladies and gentlemen, all over the world, you have oil of different chemical composition. And if the oil is sulfurous, they discount the price, and there's an established price for that kind of oil. If the oil is heavy, there's a way you measure it, and you get a price for it. If the oil is light sweet crude, you measure it, you get a different price for it. And that's why we get a different price for our offshore oil off the East Coast. All the years Amoco was doing, we get a different price. The heavy oil on land, you get a different price. Because the land crude has sulfur, you get a different price, but you can sell it. And of course, oh man, the government, you hear the kind of words the opposition leader using? The government incompetent, and the government wicked, and the government arrogant, and the government this, and the government that. And she jumps into Guyana. You know, there's oil in Guyana. Why didn't they go to Guyana and get the oil and bring it here and refine it? Well, let me tell you how we dealt with the Guyana situation. Guyanese oil, which is going to be produced probably by early 2020, I understand. They've been fortunate, they found some significant reserves in Guyana. Immediately, we sought to find out who owns the oil. Guyana Oil is owned by the government of Guyana, Exxon, and a third party. 1/3 of the oil is owned by the Guyanese government. Guyana has no intention at this time to bring any oil to shore for any refinery. The reason being that modern day technology in treating with offshore finds like that, which you can't even see from Guyana. If you're on land in Guyana, you wouldn't even see the flares. They will bring the ships that are built and specifically designed to take the oil from the wellhead onto the ship, do the water separation, and the ship sails away. That's what's happening. But even so, the Guyanese government has a claim on 1/3 of it. So a long time ago, when I became Prime Minister, I spent a day in Guyana with the Guyanese cabinet, seeking to understand what they intend to do with their new prosperity. And I discovered that to further any conversation with Guyana, not just about oil, but on business in general, because this money is going to generate all kinds of business operation in Guyana. We used to have an arrangement with Guyana called a Memorandum of Understanding, which had expired. Expired under the last government, who had no business in giving it life, I reopened the situation. And Minister Moses and Minister Green reopened the situation to establish between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana a working relationship for our business and mutual benefit. And that MOU took about a year to get the agreement of the Guyanese to sign it. About 2 weeks ago, the Guyanese government finally sent the diplomatic note indicating that they are ready to sign that arrangement as a result of the work that was done for the last year. So while there was drinking and fighting all about the place, we were doing our work. And now it has come to a point where we can sign. I am going to Guyana, I think next week, Wednesday, to sign this document which opens the way for Trinidad and Tobago's companies to participate in that prosperity that is coming to the Guyanese, even if Guyanese oil doesn't come to our refinery. And of course, we were not only stupid in Guyana, we were stupid with Jamaica. Jamaica has 36,000 barrels kept afloat by Venezuelan oil going to Jamaica as part of the Petro-Carib arrangements where Venezuela has agreed to provide the Caribbean area, including Jamaica, with refined oil products. So Venezuela provides the oil, Jamaica refines it there, and that refining itself is a problem for the government of Jamaica. Even when the oil is coming to you from Venezuela in that way, the refining is a problem. So Jamaica now is not relying on fuel oil for its power generation. 75% of Jamaica's power is now coming from LNG. They're getting out of fuel oil. But the refinery is producing 60% fuel oil on Venezuelan oil. What then is the future of that refinery? And then the refiners come to the Jamaican government and say, we want $100 million from you to invest in the refinery. Guess what the Jamaican government has done? They say, no. We are not just going to put $100 million into your refinery. We're putting in place a commission to investigate the whole business proposal to see if it is worthwhile to put $100 million in your refinery, even though the government owns a significant chunk of the refinery. And you hear the amount of money, $100 million. The Jamaican government put a commission in place to investigate whether they should put $100 million in that refining business. That is the example that is being held up to us by the opposition leader as how easy it is to have a refinery and to refine for your own business. You heard the numbers that were called tonight about our refining business. Billions and billions and billions and billions. But Jamaica is having a second and a third and a fourth thing about investing $100 million in their refinery. But you see, when we go back to the Petrotrin situation and the new arrangements, one of the most important things that has to happen is a culture of doing business properly has to emerge, otherwise we're going to recreate the same problem all over again. Let me give you an example of how that culture works. Last year, December 2016, the newly minted president of the OWTU, congratulated by all of us, immediately served strike notice. Those situations we talk about tonight existed then. They existed then, but we were faced with strike notice. Petrotrin was going to go on strike for a pay increase. And we sought to hold the line then and say, listen, reason, preserving the jobs, the well-paying jobs, the money is not there, the debt is growing, the company can't make its expenses, the Minister of Finance is required. No, strike. And the strike was due to start one Monday morning in January. And the management is negotiating with the union. The same management that told the Minister of Finance before that they cannot afford to pay any increases for the reasons you saw tonight. The management said to the Minister of Finance, we in this company cannot afford to pay any increase. That got the union annoyed, and they call a strike. Within 24 hours with the strike being due, the management then turned around and says to the government, okay, agree to the increase, and we will find a way to pay it. You understand that? The same management that told the Minister of Finance that there's no way they could pay the increase, or any increase, under the pressure of the strike threat, and in the negotiating table, the contributions to the negotiation by the management was that just agree to it, and we will find a way to pay. That strike was settled when the government agreed to authorize Petrotrin to offer the company 1% first, then the following year another percent, and then the final year 3%. So that was 5% in that order. And on that basis, the strike was going to end. You know what Petrotrin did? They settled the strike at 320. So when the cabinet very carefully said, get 1% in 1 year, so the payroll goes up a little bit by 1%, and then the next year, it will go up a little bit by 1%, and then in the third year, you get a 3%. They say, no, settle it for 3% first year, so it goes up 3%. And then you get 1% on that 3% and another 1% on that 3%. Completely opposite to what the cabinet wanted to do. So they got 5% they got 5% for 2 years as against 5% over 3 years. You know how much money that is? But that was the management at work. 113 converted to 32. And of course, the zero for the third year went to the industrial court. And the industrial court, looking at the company's circumstance, I understand granted a 1%? 1%. And of course, negotiations are due. And of course, I think everybody expects that negotiations mean pay increase. They are giving us all kinds of advice now. Why didn't you reduce the production to the local needs only? It don't go so. It's not a piece of wood that is 10 feet long and you only want 6 feet, you cut off 6 feet. No, it don't go like that. This is a refinery that is constructed in a particular way to convert it into a refinery to produce the amount of 25,000 barrels a day that we're using. You may find yourself spending even more than what they're asking for now. They want $7 billion now to be invested in the refinery, to make it operational going forward, to lose $2 billion a year. You understand that? Put $7 billion in now to keep it going. And while it is going, after that $7 billion is spent over a period of time, you will lose $2 billion a year. That's what they're asking us to do. And of course, over the period of time to bring the refinery where it should be for safety and efficiency, they say to us, it would require $25 billion. Let me explain that to you. We just got back from CLICO, a basket of assets, some of the best assets in the country, bank shares, Bitco shares, or whatever. We went out for the NIF, and people with money in this country, big people, medium people, large people, big companies, small companies, put their money in. We raised $4 billion. $4 billion. That chunk of the national effort, those assets, $4 billion. Somewhere in the country, somebody is saying to you, man, that is chick feed. Let us agree to a $25 billion investment in an industry to lose money. 25 billion. Look what 4 billion did. Look what is 4 billion. But 25 billion is, let's just go ahead merrily and keep it going like that. Oh, and don't worry, we already eat up 11 billion. And of course, when they were discovered to be playing the games with the losses, they were forced to write off 4 billion. Write-off means just take it off the books as if it never was there. $4,000 million. Those are the strands of the spider web of the industry. That is what we've been called upon to do. And the only difference, the only difference between today and the days before is that in Trinidad and Tobago today, there's a government that is prepared to do what has to be done to give the people of Trinidad and Tobago a chance for the future. That's the only difference. That is the only difference. You see, we could have done what others have done, which is play the popularity game, use the populist mechanisms. I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, I'm going to give you this, I will do that. But at the end of the day, we'll be far worse off. We in the PNM, we have just turned the sod for a new headquarters in Balize House last Thursday evening. And we're going to build a new headquarters. And you know why we're doing that now? Because we have our feet firmly rooted in the present and the future of Trinidad and Tobago. So our actions are not about short-term popularity. Our actions are about long-term survivability for all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. There will be good days and there'll be bad days. There'll be good times and there'll be bad times. For those of you here on Petrotrin now, I have no doubt that you are seeing this period as a period of bad times. But as I told you on Sunday night, rather than look at the way out into the light, there are people in this country who see this as an opportunity to launch their canoes into the ocean to take them back into government, to launch their political career that was moribund before. They take that opportunity to insult, to demonize, to lie, to misrepresent, to make fake news, and to confuse the whole issue. There were those who were hoping that they'd end up in dreamland, that the country would become ungovernable. Did you hear Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisata tonight? I am not telling anybody to riot. Remember the famous Baka story? Don't loot. Remember, don't loot? And what happened after Baka said, don't loot? Well, tonight, Mrs. Kamala Prasad said, I am not telling anybody to riot, you know. But all of a sudden, birds of a feather start to flock together. She chummy with Roger and Earl MacLeod, and who is, you know all them, right? But I'm sure they're watching her with cocky eye. Because, you know, Master know you. You see, when these things begin to happen, you have to understand what you are dealing with. As information comes to you, especially at this time, you have to look at who is talking. The very same people who got us where we are today, the very same people who had a hand in putting us where we are today, are out front trying to hold themselves out to you as savior in your moment of grief and hurt. They're the same people. The last government had the opportunity to treat with this with less pain. When NGC had $16 billion in the bank account, we could have dealt with this Petrotrin issue with less pain. But no, you leave it. You spend it on other things. You spent it in other places. You enriched a few and leave the many to face today. And of course, you know, if we do a roll call of who is now opposing this decision and predicting political doom and gloom, all of them have questions to answer as to why they did nothing about this situation, why they worsened this situation and left it here. And now that we are dealing with it, all of a sudden they are the advisors. I have heard it said that we have left out the labor movement from this decision making. I offered a place on the board to the OWTU and they turned it down. And here's the reason why they turned it down. That there's a principle involved. And the principle is this, that the government must agree that once you appoint the board, the government must have no say in what the board does. And of course, the government must go to Parliament and legislate that. So if the government tries to intervene, you'll be breaking the law. And to appoint the board, we must go to Woodford Square and have a big to-do in Woodford Square and select the board in some process, not by the minister or the cabinet appointing a board, some unidentified process other than that. And that process will appoint the board, and once you appoint the board must now be free the way they put it, the board must now be free to act without the interference of the government. So I had to ask them, who in their right mind, in any government, will know that the Constitution says that a minister of government is responsible for all items under his or her portfolio and can give general or specific instructions to that entity. That's the law. That's the Constitution. It says a minister is responsible and can give general instructions or guidelines or specific instructions or guidelines. They are telling me that the reason why they wouldn't go on Petrotrin board is because that law exists and they want a different law where you appoint a board and the board go and do whatever it wants. And the government must not be able to tell the board anything. And I had to say to him, but you yourself don't believe in that. Because every Monday morning you want to meet the Prime Minister. Everything that happened in the company, you want to talk to the Prime Minister. Not even the Minister, no, the Prime Minister. But the reason why they didn't want to go on the board is because they did not want to be part of the difficult and hard decision that had to be made. That was the reason why. In other countries, boards have worked with labor to make changes, far-reaching changes. And at the end of the day, they all came out better. I am not here knocking labor, you know. I have no fight with labor. The people who are members of the unions, they have to see what is being offered to them. They have to see what the leadership is doing. You could imagine that the law says in this country that essential services are not open to industrial action, otherwise they'll be breaking the law. But I see what's in Duke on television, big and bad. You have a court case today, it was bad last night, right? Telling civil aviation workers to abandon their posts. Well, tonight I want to say to the civil aviation workers, do not take any advice from Watson Duke and shut down our airspace. Trinidad and Tobago is not only responsible for the airspace over our territory, we are responsible for the airspace all the way up the Eastern Caribbean. People's lives are at risk. Do not take advice from Watson Duke. Watson Duke is a politician who engages the government and the PNM as a politician, and that is political advice, and it's dangerous to the region, to the country, and to you as a worker. Because I want no fight with anybody. My government is not engaging in fight with anybody, but we are going to enforce the law. If civil aviation workers take advice, if civil aviation workers take that irresponsible advice and shut down our airspace, I don't have to instruct the Attorney General to sue every one of them personally. Personally. And we will go where the law takes us, wherever there is irresponsible arrangements like that and encouragement by leaders in communities, or in the union to encourage workers to break the law and put lives at risk, we are going to go to the places where the law affects and complain about those actions. I'm appealing to our fellow citizens. If you have a job, if you've maintained a job in the public sector in this country, for heaven's sake, appreciate it was at the expense of those who had no jobs for the past. And the country has gone the extra mile to keep you in that job. And if the answer to that and the reward for that is to put their lives at risk, then off to the court we go and you answer in the court. There are governments who had less pressure on this government and took action to reduce its expenditure on the public service. We have not done that. And why we're not asking anybody to say thanks, we're just saying to you, don't endanger the country. I want to appeal to our citizens that in moments like these, the line of least resistance is the one that gets you to the place you don't want to go. It is not going to be easy, but I want to give the assurance to the people in this area in particular who will be directly affected that the same resolve that this government makes to make this decision, we resolve to be there with you and for you to ensure that the burden is eased and the pain is eased so you can get over this period of transition. The government of Trinidad and Tobago gives you that assurance. And it's not just the government, it is the people of Trinidad and Tobago who give you that assurance, because I'm sure tonight there are people in Charlottesville, there are people in Carenage, there are people in Cunupia, there are people in Sandy Grande, there are people down on Monos Island who are agreeing with me that these people who are directly affected, they ought to get an extra hand from the government to make it, because we all want to make it, and I know we could make it. So the threats and the insults are not going to change it. The only thing that's going to change it is a better idea. And if they come up with a better idea, we are open to a better idea. So tonight, I want to say to all the people of Trinidad and Tobago, this is a problem that should have and could have been fixed a long time ago. But persons who are in fear of losing their parliamentary position fail to take the decision. I am prepared to sacrifice my parliamentary and my political future doing what is right for the children of Trinidad and Tobago. And as for those who call in for elections, elections will come. And you, the caller, you only have one vote. Everybody else has a vote in this country. And it's at that time that you will determine whether you've elected a government that has the strength of character and the moral fortitude to do what has to be done to give Trinidad and Tobago a better chance. We're not coming out of oil. We're not coming out of oil. We are expanding our effort in oil. We're coming out of refining. And that brings me to the last point. How many of you ever had a car? New car. And then one day you decide, this is an old car. You make it noisy, breaking down. You're having trouble. I am going to get rid of this car. What do you do with it? So most people sell it, because the same way you think it's an old car, somebody else buying a car for the first time is a new car. Or somebody might want to work a PH with it and they need it. Or some persons have been known to just leave it right there to rot in the road. These are all the options. But the first thing we had to do was to take the refinery out of the operation and identify it as a separate entity. Once we do that now, I know of no person in this country who is interested in that refinery. And if one appears, I would look at them very carefully, because they might not be having all the marbles in the game. Because that refinery is not an easy thing to take on as an asset that you are going to own. I know of no person and nobody in my government or nobody who we have spoken to on this issue has indicated to us of any interest in that refinery. Now that we are taking it out of line, we are now going to have to look to see what are the options available. And we will treat with any option that gives us, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, a chance to have the asset work for us. And that is it. That is it. So all this stupid talk about the government have their friends to give it to, and the race talk about 1%. Every time you hear that 1% story, it runs against our national anthem where every creed and race is supposed to find an equal place. It's race talk. We're not involved in that. We are going to have a refinery there, and if there's anybody anywhere in the world who knows we have a refinery and want to come and talk to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, the door is open. The door is open. But it will not be used to continue to drain the 2 cents we have out by the billions. And it may make a few people happy, but the rest of the country will be facing bankruptcy. And let me tell you what bankruptcy means. If we get downgraded again, as we certainly will, it means that all the debt that the government is going to face going forward, because we are running deficit budgets, we have to pay more in interest charges. In some instances, certain persons wouldn't lend us money because our credit rating is too low. We are a bad risk. And I'll tell you something too, we would not be the first country that end up like that, But I gave you an assurance when I took this job as Prime Minister. I gave you an assurance that we will not be going to the IMF to rectify any problem in this country. We will take our own medicine, and today, closure of Petrotrin is the medicine that we have to take, and we'll take it of our own volition and not be ordered by the IMF. Because by the time we reach the IMF, I hear unions representing Tiantec and Wasa and others joining this and joining that. If you want trouble in this country with respect to the stability of job security in those areas, let this country follow bad advice, build up billions in debt, can't pay the debt, end up by the IMF, and then have to resort to the lender of last resort. That is when you know where barley grew. And all those who would have led this country in that direction, they will just go off and drive their BMW and say, bye-bye, birdie. And you would say, what was the PNM doing to allow this to happen? We are doing what has to be done. We are in control of what we are doing, and we are doing it for the wider national population and not for any simple sectorial interests. A union has its employees to look after, to get the best deal for. But when the national interest calls for a wider vista and different decisions, a conflict develops between what they may want and what is good for the rest of the country. And that's where we are at the moment. So I ask you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to stand with the sensible decisions that we have made. Expect us to do what has to be done and believe in the vision that we have crafted for a new Petrotrin in a vigorous oil industry and a situation where we'll be making billions as against losing billions. All of this is about converting a money-losing company into a company that is profitable. That's what this is all about. And once that company is operating profitably, it will contribute to the well-being of all of us wherever we are in Trinidad and Tobago. The government has no choice. I thank you for your support. I thank you. I thank you for your understanding. I thank you for looking ahead, not just for us, those of us to whom this country has already been good, but looking ahead at what lies down the road for the children we sent out to school yesterday. Thank you and good night.
We are a chosen generation.